Hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to another session of Futuristic Friday. My name is Koustav Chatterjee. I'm a principal at Frost & Sullivan's Healthcare and Life Sciences practice. And today I have with me an esteemed guest from the medical imaging industry, the CEO of Trivitron Healthcare, Mr. Satyaki Banerjee. Mr. Banerjee, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you, Koustav.
So let me share a brief introduction about Trivitron Healthcare. Trivitron manufactures and distributes medical technology products across 180 countries. It has more than 1,500 employees and it has offices across 23 locations. Currently, it has 15 US FDA and CE certified manufacturing units. It also holds a record of 50,000 installations across the globe. Further, it works with 1,200 channel partners and various world leading R&D partners to ensure that their products are world class and can be installed across payers and provider networks all over the world. With that being said, I would like to request Mr. Banerjee to quickly expand on the introduction I shared and briefly talk about the history of Trivitron Healthcare and also his career prior to Trivitron Healthcare with Panacea Biotech to all of us.
Thank you. So, first of all, it's a real pleasure and privilege to be part of this program. And thank you, Costa, for inviting me here. I run the medical imaging business within Trivitron Healthcare, and I've been associated with this company for more than 6 years now. So prior to my career with Trivitron, I worked in Panacea Biotech for almost 18 years, serving several roles, but primarily focused on the international business of Panacea Biotech. Before we get into this conversation, let me give you a brief background of Trivitron Healthcare, how we started, and how the business has grown over the years. So way back in 1997, Dr. Velu, with a vision of creating a very large healthcare company, he started Trivitron Healthcare. The primary focus was to make medical technology affordable and accessible to the masses across the world. We started initially as a distributor, representing, good partners, principal partners in the field of medical imaging, critical care products, and in vitro diagnostics. But as the business grew and we became more mature as an organization, we converted the initial distribution relationship to a deeper relationship. We started setting up joint ventures. The first joint venture that we had was with the Japanese company Aloka, with whom we started manufacturing ultrasound systems. And we were probably the first entity in India to make a complete ultrasound system, which included not only the assembly of the product, but we went deep into the cutting of the piezoelectric crystals, assembling the transducer, and coming up with a complete system. At almost the same point of time, we set up another joint venture with a Spanish company called Biosystems for manufacturing in vitro diagnostic reagents and instruments in this country. It was a good journey till date, but we wanted to have a much deeper hold and much deeper presence in the field of manufacturing. And that's when Trivitron decided to acquire two entities. One was Kiran Medical Systems, a company which had a legacy of manufacturing X-ray accessories and radiation protection products. And the second company was Lab Systems Diagnostics. It's a Finland-based company and one of the pioneers in the field of newborn screening and point-of-care diagnostic products. So with the integration of these two organizations into Trivitron, we could set up a very good manufacturing and R&D base. Then we also created a joint venture with a Turkish company called Bome. And through this joint venture, we expanded our portfolio of newborn screening products. And today we have emerged as one of the global leaders in the field of newborn screening and radiation protection products. We're the world #2 in the field of newborn screening. And we feature amongst the world's top 5 when it comes to our market share for radiation protection products. Now, what has happened is post the integration of these two entities, we decided to expand on the portfolio. And we diversified in the field of manufacturing medical equipment. We started by launching an image intensifier-based CM and then a flat panel-based digital CM. We are currently the #2 in the country in terms of market share. And then we expanded the portfolio, bringing in digital radiography systems, digital mammography, and we are all lined up to launch our cath lab and CT scanner in the years to come. So that's very briefly about the organization.
Thank you so much, Mr. Banerjee, for sharing that detailed background information with us. Let me quickly then move on to the core theme of today's discussion, which is medical imaging for COVID-19 management. We all know that India went through a horrible second wave, and across India, both government as well as private entities are gearing up for the third wave. The recent reshuffle in the cabinet ministry also is geared towards ensuring that we have all the resources and enablers in place to support the potential surge, especially in the case of children and newborn in the third wave of COVID-19. And also at the outset of COVID-19, we also have to touch base on the fact that over the last couple of years, we are seeing this unprecedented surge in demand for various medical imaging products, including CT scan, chest X-ray, and also oxygen ventilators and O2 concentrators and a rapid antigen testing kit or RT-PCR test. Right? We never really anticipated that in India we would require lakhs of those products in a very quick time frame. But now we need that resources at locally in our pharmacies as well. So gone are the days when people used to wait for 2-3 weeks to get access to such devices or services. Now people need that early, almost in a day's notice. So this is also one of the biggest opportunity for Trivitron Healthcare. So I'm just trying to understand from your leadership standpoint, what role your company has taken over the last couple of years to ensure that you address that surge in demand, not only in India, but globally, and continue to offer capabilities, products, and services to the larger patient population.
That's a very pertinent question, Koustav. And if we go back to probably January and February of 2020, that was the initial phase of this pandemic. I think the entire world was taken by an absolutely uncomprehendable surprise, because no one knew how to tackle this rapid spread of this infection. And from an epidemic, it became a pandemic, and a pandemic of real global concern.
Yep.
I don't think in the entire history of mankind we have seen something as relevant and as scary as this ever. Now, in the initial stages, it was very clear that medical equipment manufacturers, they have to scale up the manufacturing of ventilator products. In vitro diagnostic products, they have to start focusing on developing validated testing methods to identify COVID infection. And obviously, the pharmaceutical and the vaccine companies, they got together. Pharmaceutical companies, they started working on therapies which could help manage the COVID patients. And then we had work happening on vaccines. And as a matter of fact, what we see, if you go back and do a review of what has happened over the past 1 year, it is absolutely incredible. Let me talk of what manufacturers in India did as a group, and then we'll go deep into how Trivitron contributed towards the management of COVID-19 pandemic. If you look at the year 2019, there was probably no manufacturer of ventilators in India. And whatever little ventilator manufacturing was happening in this country, that was a negligible figure. Starting from that, companies, they got together, they aligned with the requirements of the government of India. And today, we can proudly say that Indian manufacturers, they have manufactured, supplied, and installed more than 50,000 ventilators over a span of just 1 year. This is something which is remarkable, and probably it doesn't have any precedence in the past. On similar lines, the IVD companies, they got together. They started working on developing RT-PCR test kits and rapid antigen test kits. And today, if you look at the current numbers, India manufactures more than 2.5 crore RT-PCR test kits in a month, and more than 3 crore rapid antigen test kits in a month. That's an incredible figure. Trivitron being one of the oldest medical device, medical equipment companies, and we understood our responsibility as a mature healthcare company in this particular pandemic situation. And we started working in a very focused manner, developing an entire portfolio of products for COVID. And we started working, doing serious R&D into development of RT-PCR test kits, development of ventilators. We have successfully developed two ventilators, one which is a more cost-effective budget ventilator, and that's able to address the overall large-scale requirements of the country. And we also developed a high-flow, high-end ventilator that can, in terms of feature, stand parallel to some of the topmost ventilators coming from global manufacturers. Both these ventilators, they have been approved by several agencies. It has run through multiple clinical trials. And over the past few months, we have supplied a few thousand ventilators to several government and private institutions across the country. On similar lines, we went deep into in vitro diagnostic research. We developed our RT-PCR test kits, our rapid antigen test kits, and we are one of the major suppliers of these test kits for the government requirement as well as private requirement across the country.
Yeah, sounds fascinating. I mean, the way you quickly scaled up your production to meet the ongoing demand is really fascinating to know. I'm sure we should do a couple of sessions just on that. How did you anticipate that demand and allocated resources, both financial and human resources, to scale up production and ensure that you're meeting the target on time? So, congratulations to Trivitron Healthcare for achieving that great
Thank you.
feat
Thank you.
and helping all of us when we desperately needed those services. Moving on to the medical imaging aspect of it, all of us now really acknowledge the fact that since the COVID-19 came into effect, doctors are prescribing chest X-rays higher in high number than ever, right? So there, in terms of number, there is an estimate that they're probably prescribing 30 or 40% more chest X-rays than historically they have done. Uh,
Yes.
and that also goes on to suggest that the requirement of chest X-rays and the infrastructure needs to be modernized. It needs to be accessed first. It has to be accessible. Plus, whatever access we have needs to comply with the international as well as local guidelines and protocols. Tributary Healthcare remain at the forefront of that innovation, and because of the surge that is taking place in that context, how do you ensure that your capabilities are first accessible by common people? Second, they are constantly upgraded so that you continue to deliver world-class services and world-class chest X-ray interpretations to the patients and the physicians they're interacting with.
Okay. So when you look at the medical imaging part of the healthcare setup and
Yeah,
the way COVID affected the medical imaging, the workload at medical
yeah,
imaging centers,
yeah, yeah,
one of the the first confirmatory diagnosis aspects of COVID is to go for an HRCT, and another alternative would be to go for a chest X-ray. And we have seen an unprecedented rise in the number of caseloads for both HRCT and chest X-ray across the country.
yeah,
And that is something which again doesn't have any parallel or any precedence in the past. The number
right,
of caseloads that the country has seen and probably the whole world has seen.
yeah,
Now, uh, Trivitron, what we did was we wanted to develop smart systems which can assist the healthcare providers manage the significant increase in caseloads. We developed multiple variants of X-rays, whether it was a full room X-ray or an X-ray which was dedicated for doing chest imaging. And also we were able to come up with a few mobile X-rays that had the capability of doing chest X-rays. Now, the one important aspect was how quickly you're able to acquire that image, process that image,
Yeah.
and come up with some meaningful analysis which can be used by the radiologist out here to come up with a quicker diagnosis.
Right.
And that's where we put in a lot of focus. So
Yeah.
all our X-ray systems, we incorporated a mini PACS which was built in. Even if a small center doesn't have
Yeah.
access to a PACS system, a full-fledged PACS system, there is a
Yeah.
mini PACS which is incorporated in our basic DR system. And all the mini PACS system, they have a cloud-enabled feature. So it's perfectly possible for even a small center, as long as they have access to internet or they have access to a hotspot, to
Hmm.
upload the DICOM images to the cloud, which
Yeah.
can be remotely accessed by a radiologist.
Yeah.
So if you look at the overall import of this scenario, even a
Yeah.
very small hospital in a smaller town or even in a village,
Yeah.
if they have one of our equipment which is DR enabled, and if they are able to provide an internet connection, they can effectively route that image, put it on clouds, and have some of the best radiologists look at those cases and come up with the report. And they can also guide them on how to manage the particular patient. So
Right.
that is something which we have been very effective in doing.
Sure.
As a manufacturer, we did not have a CT scanner yet, but we have taken this project on highest priority, and we are in the process of developing a 32 slice CT scanner. And very soon, probably the next time when we are interacting, we should be able to announce that the CT scanner has progressed through clinical trials, and we are in the process of launching that product in the country.
Fantastic. And we are really optimistic to get that service ASAP. Let's quickly move on to the another important aspect that I wanted to touch upon. Being a digital health consultant, I always advocated the need to apply AI on medical imaging workflows to ensure that the clinical interpretation of medical images are well done, and it can be done on real time, almost on near real time in the context of India, at least for now, and then can offer insight beyond the usual traditional disease centered interpretation, meaning, as you know, every chest x ray can have multiple interpretations beyond the underlying problem. There could be problems that are probably going to come into effect in 6 months, 1 year, or 2 years down the line. There are different disease specificities that can be identified rather well through AI technology versus the traditional radiology workflows. And in India, people are waking up to those sort of advanced medical imaging interpretations. The demand is at a lower stage right now, but we anticipate COVID-19 will be an accelerator. And both from the government side as well as from the private side, there will be strong push to adopt more such technologies that would be built into your existing PAC system, existing imaging workflows. So just trying to understand from your seat, because you're leading all these initiatives, probably contemplating moves to acquire companies or forming JVs with traditional and as well as progressive AI companies in this space. So how do you anticipate this space moving forward in the context of India in 2021 and beyond? Do you have this notion of being an optimist for this sort of an engagement, or do you think that no, we are still 10 years behind than the progressive markets like US and Europe in the context of AI and medical imaging?
I think you're asking this question at precisely the right time. Now, going back to your earlier question, whether I'm an optimist or do I feel that we'll continue doing the things the traditional way for the next few years,
Yeah.
I would put myself in the optimist category. And what COVID has done is it has acted as a catalyst. While the healthcare society, the entire fraternity, whether it was healthcare delivery organization or healthcare equipment manufacturing organization, they both
Yeah.
realized that the future is AI. And we have seen a lot of development happening in a scattered manner across the world. There are several universities, several startups, several IT companies working on AI tools.
Yeah.
But the real challenge that we saw was how do you incorporate that AI into a real practical way of working in
Yeah.
what I call the radiology workflow? So
Yeah.
what happened was the equipment manufacturers, they didn't have access to those AI tools, but they were focusing only on the hardware part of it.
Yeah.
The hospitals or the imaging centers across the world, they were more focused on handling their caseloads, and they were perfectly happy handing out either the DICOM file or a image printout of the X-rays or the CT scans to the patient. But
Yeah.
COVID has acted as a catalyst, and it has changed the whole paradigm. Now, it is a thing of the past when we are dealing with limited caseloads. I've seen centers where they are doing hundreds of HRCT scans in a single day, maybe more
Yeah.
than hundreds.
Yeah.
And it is perfectly impossible for any of these centers to, clearly manage that amount of caseload without, some kind of an assistance. And what best assistance could be rather than an AI tool? So if
Right.
there is an AI tool which is able to highlight the areas of interest for the radiologist, if you're talking of X-ray, in a chest X-ray, if there is an AI tool which is able to highlight where the radiologist is supposed to focus on, rather than having to scan through all the CT scans and all the
Yeah.
images, that is going to augment the
Right.
efforts. And that's where I see a major role of AI. What we would see
Sure.
is, say, for example, I'll take what Trivitron is doing as a case in point. We have ensured that all our medical equipment, they come up with an optional AI tool. We have started collaborating with not only private entities who have done a lot of work on AI, but we are
Yeah.
considering a healthcare IT and software as a service as a
Yeah.
major future business model for Trivitron Healthcare. We are
Right.
collaborating with leading academic institutions like the IITs in India, coming up with image processing and AI tools. And I
Yeah.
see that, and I foresee that within the next few months, we would have something which is far more tangible and something which comes as a standard. AI is going to come as a standard now with most of the
Right.
medical equipment.
Right. So you talked about the new business model in the medical imaging field, and one area that I'm really interested in the potential of teleradiology in the context of how Indian medical imaging companies are catering to demand coming in from outside. Both in India and outside, we're seeing a shortage of radiologists, and hospitals, diagnostic chains, both in India and outside, are desperately looking for software as a service related capabilities through which they can send their medical images to a central hub, and the images can be interpreted quickly by credible, skilled radiologists who are, obviously always available 24/7, 365 days a year to interpret those images and offer insight back to providers, clinicians, and patients so that right decisions can be taken at the right time. So I'm just trying to understand from your seat, because you are probably thinking of also getting into this particular field because you have this presence across the entire medical imaging ecosystem and beyond. So would you be able to quickly touch base on this potential disruption in the radiology business space and what you're planning to do in this field in future so that you cater to that demand as well?
Okay. I can't think of a more better timing to ask this question. And as I said earlier, that COVID has changed the way we look at the healthcare business in totality. Now, there are a lot of countries across the world where they have access to equipment, but they don't have the pool of radiologists to really interpret the images which are coming out of those medical equipment. And I think India is blessed in a way. We have probably the largest pool of the world's best radiologists in this country.
Yeah.
And that is the biggest strength of India. And we, as a manufacturer, we have been working with radiologists for more than 3 decades now, and we have excellent working relationship with them. And when I spoke with them in person and we touched upon this topic, I felt that almost everyone, they are quite willing to contribute towards this noble cause. where the expertise is not just limited within the particular hospital they are associated with, but when you're able to integrate everything into a system where things are there in a cloud-based pack system, if they're able to access the DICOM files from a remote location, they can make their expertise available to smaller centers, and not only in India but also outside of India. And they can interpret the CT scans, the X-ray images, MRI scans, and they can give their expert opinion on that. I feel that becoming something more of a norm rather than an exception in the times to come.
Sure, sure. I think I'm really happy to know that again, because teleradiology is a very close subject of mine, and we have done a lot of work at Frost and Sullivan advising global medical imaging clients on the potential of teleradiology. And the fact that you're taking the lead on this from India and abroad is really gratifying for us, because that validates our assumption and our growth outlook for this market. We are moving close to our final question. And the final question for you would be on, again, the role of technology in medical imaging, because this is Futuristic Friday. So we are primarily trying to touch upon concepts, ideas, which probably will come into effect a couple of years from now. So the question really to you is, how do you ensure that the uncertainty that still exists in the market will be well capitalized from the context of offering devices, services in the medical imaging industry, not necessarily from the context of Trivitron Healthcare, but the industry overall, as a stakeholder in the industry, as a thought leader and subject matter expert of medical imaging. Do you think that this is really the time that medical imaging industry has waited for almost a decade now, and they need to pivot now and adopt disruptive technologies and business models to ensure that they remain in the game and optimize the opportunity that exists today?
Absolutely. To answer this question, let me start by taking an analogy. In an earlier situation, this conversation between you and me would have been one-to-one, face-to-face, sitting in a studio. But
Correct.
today we are connecting virtually using an internet-based platform. We,
Yeah.
we, we are seeing education being imparted over the internet. People are having virtual classes, and almost everything has become virtual.
Yep.
So COVID has changed the way we do our business. Education is important. It has affected almost every aspect of our lifestyle. And I think the same thing is going to happen in the field of medical imaging. Medical imaging would no more be something like a closed setup between an interaction between radiologist, the patient, and uh, sophisticated hardware which is doing the scans. It's going to become a far more broader based, with software and cloud playing a major role of it, major role in delivery of healthcare. Okay. Most of these equipments, I would foresee, they would be connected to a cloud-based PAC system. Things would be available all across the world remotely. Radiologists would be able to access the images. Patients would be able to read the interpretation of the radiologist, and consultation of doctor can be happening remotely. So the whole thing is going to get integrated into a network, into a much more
Yep.
holistic network, but the
Yep.
entire healthcare delivery is going to happen almost virtually.
Right. Right. Yeah, virtual care is exploding. I completely agree with you. And especially in US, what we are seeing is virtual care enablers are getting accepted across the care continuum, not necessarily within the four boundaries of a hospital, but when patients are getting discharged from a hospital, they continue to use virtual care enablers to stay in touch with their providers, payers, care coaches, and their providers and clinicians directly. The fact that India is also moving towards that common goal of completely virtualizing healthcare delivery at a population level is really, really gratifying to all of us. And we cannot wait to get on board with that particular idea and that business model, because it doesn't matter now. In India, everyone has a smartphone, everyone has basic internet connectivity, and with 5G coming in, the roadblock of bandwidth will also go away. and people will continue to use smartphones and internet to stay in touch with their clinicians, providers. And I think at the end of the day, it would come back to medical imaging companies and other healthcare stakeholders whether they can meet the demand or not. We always knew that the demand is exceptional in India. It's just a matter whether we would be able to meet the demand with the quality of service which we can sustain over a period of time. So that would be the
Absolutely.
challenge for all of us moving forward. The
Yeah.
demand would not be a challenge. Investment would not be a challenge. The challenge would be to offer the service at scale consistently over a given period of time.
Uh, in a normal situation, we would have been having this interaction face to face, sitting in a studio. But today we are connected on a virtual platform, interacting over the internet. And I see the same thing happening when it comes to education. People are having online classes. People are having online meetings in a workplace. So I think everything has moved from a more physical one-to-one connect to a virtual connect.
Yeah,
And it would be fair to assume that the same transition is going to happen in the field of healthcare. Till now, the healthcare delivery has been confined to the doctor's clinic or to the premises of a hospital. A patient would go and have a CT scan, have an MRI scan, consult the
yeah,
doctor probably in the same hospital, and
yeah,
even the medication for the prescription would be handed out within the same setup. But as we move forward, we are going to move into a more interconnected world where the scan can happen at a location which is probably much more convenient to the patient. The DICOM files can be uploaded to a cloud-based PAC system, which can be accessed by a radiologist sitting in a remote location. It can
yeah.
be in the same country, it can be in a different country.
Right,
And the report writing can happen by the radiologist, which would be read and interpreted by a doctor in another country. And the prescription would be handed over through an online portal pharmacy, through an online pharmacy to the patient. That's where healthcare is headed. And on top of that, beyond the initial layer, you would have an AI algorithm sitting in where it's not only going to help with the diagnosis and the delivery of the healthcare, but also is going to ease out a lot of things for the patient, whether it is access to the nearby healthcare centers, access to the nearest imaging centers. So I feel in a connected world with smartphones, with laptops, with iPads, we are moving to a paradigm shift in the way we are looking at the healthcare industry in totality.
yeah, yeah,
A case in point is the way vaccines are being delivered in this country. And it's become a very simple procedure. You log into the Coven app. You have all the nearby locations where vaccinations are being given. You book a time slot. You land up at that particular time slot. You get the
yeah.
vaccine, and within seconds, you have the vaccination certificate delivered to your mobile phone.
Right.
That's a a change that we are seeing happening in the way the healthcare delivery is happening. And I think this is just the beginning. COVID has acted as a catalyst, and I think as we move forward, it's going to change the whole way we have visualized healthcare till now.
Yeah.
I think
No,
that's where
completely.
we are headed.
Completely agree. We all are really happy that India has taken that lead of improving their digital infrastructure, and we have now policies in place to ensure that every health system in India adheres to that central digital infrastructure guideline. And once we are able to connect and integrate all those systems into one unifying infrastructure system, democratizing access to healthcare will be even more easy. So with that being said, we both are very optimistic. We both are in this field advocating the need for technology in healthcare, democratizing healthcare access, bringing affordability in place. We'll talk about the affordability aspect at a later call, maybe, and also how we can collectively improve the outcomes as well. We often don't talk about the outcomes aspect as much, right? We just talk about the access and affordability, but not the quality and outcomes. So we need to move towards a direction where we offer reimbursement in accordance with the quality and value of the services that healthcare systems deliver to their patient population. And we hope that in 3 to 5 years' time, India would have definite policies in that regard as well. So with that being said, I would like to conclude the session today and would like to thank you, Mr. Banerjee, for your time today. It has been a privilege and honor for all of us to have the opportunity to host you, and we look forward to stay engaged and have more sessions coming up in future. Thank you.
Thank you, Koustav. It has been a pleasure and privilege